Well, we're back in Lorient, and the first boat that caught my eye was not a sailboat, but a motorboat. A motorboat built by JPK. It's supposed to cruise at high speeds and sip the fuel at a low rate. I'm going to walk over to the factory and check in on my old friends. Well, we're back where all the magic started, and here is the deck of a 39 being constructed. It's interesting, you get to see how the wraparound black windows has a pillar, and they spray paint it black. Bonjour. It's neat to see photos of the boat when it's being constructed, because then you can kind of better understand how to fix stuff. You know? It's like, oh. Because did you realize this is just painted? Plenty of effort goes into making a mold that can produce such a beautiful arch in the stern. This is the 13th boat, so they've made 6 boats since I've gotten mine. Or maybe they've made more, I don't know. You'll notice there's a wood structure in the stern of the boat. It is a tiny bit too tight for my life raft, but I've never dared to cut it because I think it supports the boat's stability. Against the bulkhead, you'll find a tiny shelf. That is where my ram is for steering the boat. I have a second one on port side because I have a redundant system. This owner has chosen to have only one autopilot. They've also chosen to have only one fuel tank. The boat looks much smaller when it's just bulkheads and no interior furniture. On port is the quarter berth, on starboard the technical room, and looking forward the salon and galley, and through the door the V-berth. The magic of the factory, and there's 2 areas to this factory. This is one of the areas, and then there's 3 bays on the other side which are more for the more finished boats. There's also a building that contains the design offices. Well, some lucky owner's about to get their boat. This is a great opportunity to show how the keel works. I keep explaining it to friends that it's very similar to that of a 470, except the keel doesn't go into the hull, it stays outside the hull. Maybe pictures will be a better way to understand it. And the final minutia, they changed supplier of the bow thruster. I like mine, I wonder why. Okay, Gail, where are we right now? And what is this place known for?
It's cribs.
And what do they use for art? Oh my, they use old JPK sailboards for windsurfing. One of the attractions of Lorient is Karver's product demonstration place.
Load springs, which are here inside.
Today I was getting a lesson in how to maintain my 3-speed winches. They're a bit more sensitive, so they require more frequent maintenance.
To be careful with the services, while with a conventional one you can keep it for 3-4 years without. You can open here to remove the bearings by unscrewing here.
Yep.
And then you got the direct access. You can also open by unscrewing those 5 ones.
Yep.
And clean the gears, clean this, and that's it.
Mon travail pour demain.
Trying to get it closer too. Oh yes, perfect.
Here we see Gail is putting the boat into summer mode. We finally have temperatures above 60 degrees. And so she is kindly attaching the window shades. And they're real simple, just a bit of textiling that covers them. But look at the change in appearance of the boat. Unfortunately, it's much harder to see out, but the temperature drops significantly with this shade. We are now having lunch in a car museum, sort of a French thing. Great place to eat, and then you look out on the view of classic Porsches. We attended a local one-day innovation marine event, and they came up with the greatest idea. It's a mooring ball that can sense when a boat's attached, and thus inform the computer that that mooring ball is no longer available. Why didn't I think of that? It's a great idea. Let's hope this becomes standard. You could see the ball in a better angle here. It's supposed to also be good for the environment. I never tire seeing the Imoca boats. I guess I should also be excited about Sobadeo, which is even much faster. But Imocas are my favorite. This video was taken almost 6 months ago, and now the Vendée Globe is near its end. 25 of the 40 competitors have actually crossed the finish line. This boat, hoisting its mainsail, is vulnerable. One vulnerable is run by a Frenchman and another by an Englishman. The winner made it around the world in 64 days. Wowza. Here I am standing in front of Clarisse Cremer's Imoca boat, which she will race in the Vendée Globe. Now, just to drop names, her uncle was a student of my father's. Small world. I'm very sensitive to squeaky noises. The lower portion of the door likes to squeak when the top portion's installed and you're at anchor or in a marina. Boom. Silenced. Okay, look who's passing near Cyclops today. That is one military-looking ship. Can't say I would want to have to tangle. Betsy Ross, seamstress extraordinaire. What are you mending now?
Your belly bottoms. The Velcro on the pocket seems to have come undone.
Seamstress Gail is going to fix it. Okay, now we're going to experiment with how much the balance of the boat changes when the keel is lowered. So we had 2 degrees of trim. Trim's a fancy word for saying how much the boat is popping a wheelie. Experiment on trim continues. Get ready to hear the clunk as the keel reaches its deepest point. Boom, we're there. And the trim didn't change one bit. After my failed experiment to see the trim change when I lowered or raised the keel, I am now debugging it. I just changed the source for trim. When I changed it to the other source, it changed from being 2 degrees to 1 degree, but did not budge when the keel changed position. So maybe just changing the keel position doesn't change the trim of the boat discernibly. Now, why would I care one hoot about the trim number? Well, I think it's an input to the autopilot when it calculates the true wind speed, adjusts for trim. Told I had to change my slip immediately. The problem is this is a river, and right now it's not doing much, but at the time the current was going very dramatically this way. This is my new slip. My previous bunkmate was fairly close. What I did is I worked on warping. Warping's just a fancy name for using dock lines to adjust the boat. I had a dock line going from the midships to the dock, and as I put the boat into gear, it would snug the boat closer to the dock. I love the tillers on this boat and wouldn't change them no matter what. But one of the things you'll notice about the tillers, I don't know if it comes up in the video well, but they are far from straight. The rudder stock is right here, but you wouldn't want the tiller to go straight because there'd be no room for your legs. So they bow out into the interior of the boat, which makes it an incredibly comfortable boat to sail. When you're motoring in reverse, though, there's one small flaw, and that is it's not super obvious when you have the tiller dead center. Now, usually when you're using a tiller, you never look back to see if it's in center, because if the boat is moving and the tiller's not center, the bow's going to start to move. You're going to start to turn. And so never do you really think about that, except in this one scenario. When you're dead still and you're about to back up out of a slip, or you're dead still in a maneuver and you're trying to back up before the boat has momentum, you're only using the tiller itself's position to know whether it's centered. Well, technology always has an answer to that. And so the autopilot tells you right here the rudder angle. But who in the world is going to be able to read those small numbers while backing up a boat into current? So that's great, but not useful in port operations. So I have created my own solution. And that is just on the side I steer at, there is a little red arrow and it points to a 0. And so I'm not going for super precise, but it's just a quick reminder. You just glance down there if you're at 0 speed in reverse, and it tells you, yeah, don't worry, you have the tiller straight, you're good. And so one app is the autopilot, and the autopilot's just great. Then you can just use the knob here on the chart plotter as your wheel. If you want to rock out your tunes, there's this. I didn't really want it done, but the factory did it for me. They networked it to the Fusion, and I actually like it a lot. And then finally, this is something I did myself. It was a software update and a little bit of a effort. And what that does is these are switches I can quickly access and turn lights on and off in the boat, super at nighttime. Brittany is such a beautiful part of the world with its dramatic tides, but nobody's going to accuse it of being too warm in the summer. In June and July, every morning it was in the 40s or 50s. Here's the Sauvetage de Mer, which is their version of the Coast Guard. But in Europe, the Coast Guard is actually funded by public donations. First thing I do is I check the belts, just make sure they're not too loose. There's specs in the manual. This is the belt that drives the high power alternator, and this is the one that charges starter battery. I check to make sure the filters aren't leaking, just rub a little finger there. That's the fuel filter, and over here is the oil filter. I really care more about that after I've just changed them. Here's the water pump. One of the things I do is I put my hand underneath the water pump looking for salt crystal, trying to feel salt crystals or any moisture. I check underneath the engine for oil or anything. I try to keep that very clean. I check in front of the engine for some type of water or coolant accumulation. I then check the coolant bottle that's marked of where it should be. I rub my hand around there, also looking for like crystals from coolant or wetness. I take a photo, because it's too far back, of the strainer to see if it's got anything in its contents. I briefly check the siphon brake. That's pretty easy to tell because there's yellow coolant. If it's all yellow coolant, then the siphon brake's not working. If it's got white, that means it's empty, meaning the siphon brake is working. I check, of course, the oil, and then I go behind the engine and check the sail drive oil. Then I try to also just look around, making sure there's no loose wires. You can see there's a big alternator wire here that I check on. You know, just generally try to find something. If I haven't used the engine in a long time, I pump this to prime it a bit better. And then if less regular checks, I check the shifter cables and stuff like that. For the longest time, I've tried to figure out how to enter these Schneider Electric boxes. They just protect some wires. In this particular case, I think it's a coax connection for the 4G. And it's no more complicated than sticking your screwdriver in that little gap and wiggling away. The problem with having such a straight bow is that when you're bringing the anchor back up, it wants to take bites out of the bow. So I bought a bow fender, but my initial bow fender is rather large, heavy, and cumbersome. So then I upgraded to a more lightweight bow fender from Germany. Well, the problem is it's too dainty, and I've reverted back to my heavy but reliable bow fender. Here I am testing the new German one before rejecting it. The black sail tie is my second way of securing the anchor. I think I need to get a more robust line. This demonstration by the Coast Guard really impressed me. What they did is they had one of their volunteers head out into the water and act like he was drowning. They then sent the two rescue dogs to swim him to shore. One grabbed him in his left arm, the other one in his right arm, and they propelled him all the way to shore. Amazing. It's in the mouth. That is amazing. The hand is in the mouth. That's great. The boats are getting ready for the classic yacht parade. Brittany has a wonderful collection of town festivals, but this boating festival definitely was in the top tier. We decided to take another tack and explore the River Blavet. Specifically, we wanted to check out the town Hennebon. Trip started in Lorient and followed the red line inland. So this bridge is as far as you can go on the Blavet if you are a sailboat. And this is where the sailboats rest at their final upriver location. Passed a sign that said Access Chemin Ronde, which means access to the round road. And this is a cool castle wall walk, which I don't think anybody can disagree. The castle wall walks are great. With what a gorgeous garden down there. The name of the river is the Blavet. Quite a nice footbridge here. And that's all the way down there is where the boats are. This is the list of écluses, which means lock. The red dot is where we are, and you can see everything up the river has got huge quantity of locks. We just got passed by this group of cyclists, and the woman leading it warned us by saying, "Attention, convoyeur exceptionnel." And that is very funny because they use that expression for like large things being taken down the highway. And so it was used, I think, a little bit as a joke. So we've reached the first lock. The channel is completely bone dry, and one of the red markers is just lying in the gravel. You need the tide to come in. Then I think you enter to the lock, and its purpose is just to basically get you over these falls. So there's just a better view of the now empty entrance to the lock. And that entrance will fill with water. Then you close the lock door, and then you get over the falls. You'd come into here, and then you'd operate this big bad boy wheelie thing. And that big bad boy wheelie thing then closes this door. And then you open some vents that let water come in through the door on the higher side. Your boat floats higher, you open the door, and you continue your voyage. All avoiding these nasty looking shallow rocky falls. This torrential flow of water says one thing. I now understand why the current is always one direction at the marina. All this water's gotta go across my slip first. Oh, and there's Gail enjoying life crossing the bridge. Here's a canal boat. Clearly, we have reached the famous canal system, which, if you're wondering, the canal system was very invested by the French government and made redundant some 15, 20 years later by the train. This is a Dutch-style barge, and why I say that is because it has those big boards, or lee boards I think the Dutch call them. And then you'll notice that the mast can go up quite quickly. There's a big cranky wheel that would raise the mast. It seems like there are these little mini, I wouldn't call them towns, but maybe just a restaurant and such located by the lock. And so we've just hit our next lock, and it has a cute buvette, place to drink. That comes from the verb bouffoir, to drink, and it just like when you add an et to it, it just becomes little. And here's another lock. It does wet my whistle for a barge adventure. This is not the direction of the chatbot.